Welcome to Art with Ian. This is episode 2 of the real-time painting series. I don't know how many episodes it's going to be. We didn't get quite as far in the first episode as I wanted to, but I'm not really going to rush anything. This is just real-time painting. The process, can be as long as it is, so that's okay. I'm hoping in this one to definitely get to full color and maybe a little bit of shading, shadow and light, but I don't know for sure. I want to make some adjustments to the actual proportions of this sketch we were doing. It was getting kind of late, getting kind of dark in my room when I was working on this on the first episode, and I kind of called it before I was really fully happy with my proportions and my pose. So first things first, let's get that working. So I'm going to pull my lasso tool up. Well, actually, I'm using the kind of geometric lasso tool. And first thing I want to do is take this arm, and I guess I need to bring the fairy with. I didn't actually sketch the fairy, so the fairy's not going to come with, actually, for that matter. It's on a different layer, but that's okay. What I want to do is kind of turn this a little bit, bring it this way, and I'm going to go to distort, and I'm just going to bring the angle of this down a little bit, kind of somewhere in there. Let's try that. Okay, I think I like that a little bit better. That means the fairy's going to need to adjust, but that's okay. We'll deal with that when we get to it. I do think that probably the width or the size of this maybe needs to be a little bit smaller as well. So let's do that actually really quick. Yeah, let's try for that. Okay, that's feeling a little better. Okay, next thing I want to do is his head, his face. He actually has a pretty narrow, like from my references, he has a pretty long, narrow face, but he's not looking straight at camera like this. He's tilted, and certainly his face is too long for that angle. So I'm going to try, I think what I'm going to actually do instead of, no, I'll keep using this. Instead of shortening the face, I think I'm actually just going to make it wider, and we'll see if that deals with it. Because he's actually in the game, he's actually a teenager, and usually I think his head is just a little bit bigger to the proportion of his body. Like if you look at kids' proportions, like children's proportions, their heads, especially like infants, toddlers, their heads are huge compared to their bodies. And then their body, the proportions get more and more, like the body gets bigger and the head doesn't change as much. So the younger a character is, if you want to make them look younger, make their head a little bit bigger to their body than an adult's would be. Let's just check that. Definitely. Let's go do a back and forth. Undo or toggle. Undo deselect. Undo retransform. Yeah, I think that was definitely I think that definitely was good. Might even go a little bit more, but we'll just leave that for the moment. Okay, another thing I want to do is his leg is probably it's probably the right length if it was pointed straight down at the ground, but it actually needs to be coming out away from his body, and so it's too long. Both of these legs are probably too long, which is kind of works out well, because that means I can actually just get in here and do something like this. And if you watched the first episode, you'll recall me saying that one of the reasons why I love to work digitally is for this exact reason, because it's so nice to be able to work without any fear that everything you're doing is either permanent or it's going to cost you a bunch of money in materials that, used, that you have to start over, or, whatever kind of a situation. So I really do enjoy the digital platform allows for this kind of thing. I think I'm going to stretch this to make it line back up here and warp that. Bink. Okay, that's a little better. Definitely doesn't feel quite like his leg is too long now. Still a little bit, maybe. Looking at some references of him that I've got. Yeah, maybe. I think that this section here is probably not really happy with it. So I will go grab that and do something like this. I think the meat of his leg here just needed to be a lot more reasonable, like that. Let's see, what else was I looking at? I spent some time looking at this after the video, after I was done recording the last video, so that I would hopefully have most of these things locked in that I wanted to do, so it wouldn't take too long at the start of this video to deal with it. I think maybe I'm just about happy with that for now. This hand is probably too big, technically. But I don't know about the handle of the sword. The handle of the sword might be too big too, so we can just do the whole lot here. And if you can hear the clicking of my mouse on the microphone, using this geometric lasso tool with a mouse I find is easier, because sometimes with a pen, if you double click on accident with a pen, it'll automatically think that you're done or you're trying to close your selection, and that can be really frustrating. So I just use my mouse. If you're working on a Cintiq and you don't have a mouse, then obviously that's not an option, but I work on an Intuos Pro, and so I kind of combine the mouse and the pad and stylus work together. Okay, I think that, just thinking about the size of the hand to the face, I think that's probably getting better there. I never, like, when I go to paint, I will continue to think about all these things, these proportions and things, but I'm feeling happier with that. I should have actually created a new layer so I could just toggle back and forth and see the changes, but I'm feeling pretty happy with that. Last thing I want to do is make this cork smaller. It's in the foreground a little bit of the jar, which is why I made it bigger, but it's like excessive, really. So it doesn't need to be that like that. That's better. Okay, let's think here. Looking at some of my refs, I think this leg could still stand to go. Maybe even a little bit more. I think so. I think I'm gonna go for that. Get it closer to the plane of his other foot. Okay, that's starting to feel better. Now we need to grab the fairy off the other layer and bring that into kind of a relevant location. All right, so now I need to paint the Master Sword, and I've actually brought my reference into here, so I'm not looking up because it's kind of got a pretty specific design happening about it, and I think I'm going to turn this layer off. I'm going to turn this layer down so it's not as much in my way, and then we're gonna go ahead and get into this thing. So I want the sword to be in its own perspective, to against the perspective of Link. I want it to be, let's go ahead and grab a different brush here really quick. I want that perspective to be kind of like, that's weird. Something selected? No? Brush isn't working. That's very odd. Okay, that brush is working. Bizarre. Okay, well, either way. Anyways, moving on. That was really weird. Okay, so I want the proportion to be, or the perspective, I should say, to be kind of coming across like this. And then I want that perspective is going to start to flare out a little bit. Not that much, though. Just a little bit of flaring, right? Like in that direction. It's only going to really be relevant until we get to here, because the point is, I don't think it will really show too much in the point. Anyways, so let's make that stuff go away. Get on a new layer. I think I'm actually gonna give myself that little bit of a grid and just keep it there to work on, and while I'm going here. Nope, that's not quite it. If you're curious how to make these straight lines, how I'm doing straight lines at any particular angle like this, it's you click or you push down with your pen to make a dot or whatever, and then you hold down shift and you move to where you want the line to be, and you push down again with your pen and it draws a line between those 2 points. I think that just those two will get me where I want to be, so I'm gonna turn the opacity down on that. Create a new layer, get back to my pressure sensitive brush. Okay, so let's look at this thing. Let's just start to break down the shape. So we can see here there's a kind of a triangle, like a half circle slash triangle type shape, and that's the handle's fairly long, so I'm actually going to put the handle up higher above his hand, because I think if he's leaning on the sword, his hand's going to come down to the bottom of the pommel and rest into this. That's just the natural, you know, finding something to like hold his body, right? So he's going to be tight down here with his hand more than up here. So this is going to be coming out right here. And unfortunately, I don't know the exact size of the sword to his body ratio. Like it's going to be, I'm just kind of going to be guessing a bit. I do have a reference of him holding the sword, but it's at a really cool angle. A great shot, but not perfect, not very good for the purposes of actually better understanding the proportions between the two. Okay, so then this is going away from the camera, so this one at the back is going to be less, it's going to have less length than this one. Our perspective is going that way towards Link's body. Okay, so we got that. Then these come down. Let's see, they've got kind of a triangle. They create a triangle going into the point of the cylinder bit. And then they come up and they flare around to form this kind of flat bottom, or you know, this like that kind of a shape. And this shape is, these triangles are higher. There's an angle down to this, so I need to make sure these go low enough, like that kind of a thing, but not too much. Thinking about that flare of the perspective. very subtle, but it's there and it needs to be there or it won't look right. The sword also has some sense of thickness, but I'm not sure of how the planes or the angles work on it. Unfortunately, my reference is straight on. I'm just going to assume that it does something like that. I don't know. That might be something I have to look up before we go into final detail. In fact, it will be something I have to look up before we go into final detail. Okay, then the triangles have a little bit of, there's a little bit of space between the points of these triangles and the actual blade coming out. And then there's a triangle that goes this way that looks like it's got kind of a, it's like shaded on one side like that. So it's got some dimension to it. Okay, I'm going to turn my canvas. I'm holding R to bring up the rotation option, and just as soon as I let go, I'll be back to my brush. Also, holding down the space bar brings up the hand if you want to move your canvas around. These are just, I assume a lot of you guys probably know these types of things, but never hurts to mention it just in case. Okay, this kind of goes down a decent little ways, but I'm not sure just how far. I think I'll just go to here. I think that was kind of my plan when I drew that line there, to have that be the point of reference for this. And from here, it tapers back in. So we get a line that goes straight through. It looks like, virtually. Maybe it's a little wider here after the point, after this diamond point, and then there's lines that come off of here. And then from there, we just head on down. And I could just use that straight line tool that I showed before, that I used to get my perspective lines, but I'll just freehand it. And then we need to think about how far this point would be in front of his body, because if it's too far in front of his body, it'll look like it's angled out, and it would just slip out from him, and he wouldn't be able to use it to prop himself up. So let's just go with something around here for now. And then looking at this point on the Master Sword, it's actually fairly tapered. Or it's got a fairly long, from the first point of rounding to the point, it's actually fairly long. So we'll kind of play with that a little bit, holding down E to pull my eraser up. And I'm still holding it, and so when I let go of E, I'm back to my brush. And that's definitely the way I work. Going back and forth between, okay, there's a inside dimension here that we gotta bring back. Now, if you watched the first video, you'll know that I'm not overly worried about my line work being really good, which I'm assuming you probably realized already just from seeing how I'm handling it. It's not great. And the reason for that is because this is going to be a painting, not a line drawing. So all I'm doing right now really is establishing the things that I need to know, the most important parts of the painting, landmarks basically, so that when I do go to paint, I can see some of the most important things without stressing about what I'm trying to, what colors I'm laying down or a shade. It's really more for like where the light and shadow is going to be. I feel like I need to tuck this in a little bit more for the perspective. And somehow this line got away from me. I must have erased it out on accident. Okay, let's see here. Okay, this perspective is wrong. look at that right here. We need to be able to draw a straight line through there like that. Okay. All right, let's see here now. That's probably fairly serviceable for our needs going to paint. Now I need to worry about this bit coming up here. So the Master Sword is kind of a one and two-handed sword. It's a little bit hybrid. But the pommel, as you can see, is quite, the handle and pommel is quite a ways away from here. So that's definitely big enough for two hands. So I'm going to extend this up a little ways, but I'm not going to go too far because I don't want it to look too out of place away from the rest of the shot. And it's kind of like it's kind of like a trapezoidal type of shape. It's a little bit more angular than the version that I did in my opening sketch. I think we're gonna just go for something like that for right now. And call it good. Okay, let's see how this looks proportionate to the rest of the shot here. Forgot I wasn't working where I wanted to be. Here we go. That's the view I like. By the way, to switch through your views, if you don't know, it's the F key. I like working in the second one because it keeps more of my options up, but takes away my bottom bar and other stuff like that. Okay, how does that feel? I think maybe this section here. Well, no, actually what I did is I forgot to put in that's the reason why. Okay, that needs its dimension. That'll narrow the field of it, or the feeling of it. Just like that. And that. Okay. Just make sure that's kind of out of the way there a little bit. All right. Let's see here. I think I'm fairly happy with that. Let's just add the Triforce on for good measure. Even though this is really something that's going to need to be painted again in the end. It's kind of an internal detail, but that's okay. I think that, just to kind of indicate where it is. I think it's actually a little bigger than that. Let's... go with that. All right. Let's just call that good for right now. Possible that it's a little too thick because it has actually turned in space, which means we're not seeing the full thickness of it. So I might actually do something about that right now. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm going to. So I'm just going to go around this Triforce. Control T to bring up your transform. Oh, and you need to hold down Shift when you're, if you want to squeeze just the width of something and not actually the whole entire size of it. I think I'm going to be okay with that for now. I think maybe this actually, it just got a little carried away with how much wider that is there. Maybe more than a little. Okay, that's better. Alright. Let's turn that ref off, it's distracting. And turn the opacity back up of the rest of our drawing. Now I'm going to go in and erase away. Oop, not that bit though. Erase away from behind the sword just so it's not confusing to look at. And I think we're gonna call that fine and merge these layers down together. Oh, I see what happened. Okay. Those are perspective lines. Don't need those anymore. Well, I might, but not right now. Okay. Get rid of this. Merge these together. Okay, I'm going to name this link sketch. Now I'm going to go through and make sure all of the lines, like see that space right there? See this space here? I'm going to make sure all the lines are connected. Because what I want to do is get a gradient, or not a gradient, but I want to get a mask fill going here. Oh, I forgot to erase this away. That's all right. Let's see. Just looking for little breaks. This can be a little bit tedious at times, but it's worth it, in my opinion, for the speed at which you can get your fill color down. Okay, that's all connected. This all looks connected. Erase some of that away, though I don't need it. Looks like we need something here. Yeah, there's probably some gaps here in the hair. there. Okay, probably here too. A little bit. Oh, you know, I never did put his buckle here. Not that it's really that important, but there it is. Oh, here's a gap right here. In fact, we have a few wonky things happening from our adjustments right through there. Excuse me. All right, let's give it a check and see if this actually works. I'm not including the fairy because it's fine. I'll just paint over the rough sketch. It's very, very simple design for those. It's literally just a glowing orb with some very basic wings on. So holding down W brings up the wand tool, and I'm going to click and see, nope, we still have a gap somewhere. Not sure where, but it's somewhere. Zoom in a little bit more. Oh, there's one. Right there. There's another one. There's one. You can see how rough my line work is when I zoom in like this. And I really do stress that you don't, if you're planning on following along with this video and you're going to go to paint and you're going to try and do like a full render, I can't stress enough that you try to ignore the impulse to make your line work good, because it's not meaningful. It just isn't meaningful. And having good line work when you're not going to actually use your line work is not proving anything to yourself or to anything else. It's just wasting, it's just literally just wasting your time to worry about it. So I would try not to. Okay, let's see here. I might actually end up doing more folds on his sleeves and when I go to paint, because looking at my references, it seems like he's got quite a bit of foldage going on in the sleeve, but we'll see about how to handle that in paint. When we're doing shadow and light, that's how you flesh these kinds of things out. Okay, there's probably something going on in the hair. I'm just gonna get like that and just make it solid. Okay, I think we're ready to try again. I don't see any gaps. I'm sure there probably still is one, but we'll see what happens. Okay, holding down W. Oh, we got close. What is this thing? That's really strange that it's selecting something there. No idea what it is, but it's gonna go away. Okay. Oh, there's a tiny gap right there. And right there. That might have been it. Okay, trying again. That's weird. Everything's working except for over here in this arm. See how it's coming inside this arm? So that tells me whatever problem we have now, it is over there. Somewhere. So I'm just gonna come through here. With a bold line. Never did indicate his fingernails. That's fine though. I usually do like all of that kind of level of stuff in Paint. Okay. I don't see a gap. Everything looks solid, solid, solid. No gap. I don't see a gap here. That's touching. Oh, there's a little tiny something right there. Okay. Trying again. Usually this takes a while, but it doesn't usually take this long. It's taking this long because I'm making a video, so it's just being facetious. Aha! Looks like the cork didn't fill in, but I don't care about that. That's like one little swatch of color. So now once you have your character selected, oh, I need to select the inside of there. That's you. If you want to add selections, hold down Shift, and then click the area you want to add to the selection, and it'll add it instead of making a new selection. So now I'm going to go to Select, Inverse Selection. And I'm going to create a layer on top of my rough one underneath my actual sketch I've been working on. And I'm just going to get whatever color, doesn't matter. G is the hotkey for your bucket fill. And I'm going to fill that in. And then Control D to deselect it. Now I need to go and deal with this bit of the cork, which is fine. It's nothing much. Okay. And now we have a fill. We have a mask we can work with. And the way that I'm going to do this painting is actually toward when we get later on in the painting, I'm actually going to be roughing up the edges a little bit. It's going to be a little bit more painterly. It's not going to be very crisp and clean digital. I'm going to be going for a slightly more realistic, slightly more painterly approach to the rendering, which you'll probably see in the thumbnail of this video when you click, because I'm going to wait until I'm actually done with the painting to actually release any of these videos. But I'm going to turn this fairy on and quickly just paint the fairy and get it out of the way. So let's see here. Let's name it so we know what it is. Fairy. Looking at my reference, we need to get into the pinks. We could either get to pink from down at the bottom in the reds, or we could also get into the cooler pinks towards purple. And I think that the pink is just a little bit on the cooler side. So I'm going to bring it to here. And I'm just going to start with a color that I think is close. And I'm going to lay down solid color first. And then I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Let's see, how blurry are they? A little bit. I'm just going to call that good for right now. I'm going to go into basically close to white. Change my brush to, this is just the soft round brush, the very top brush, first brush in Photoshop. And I'm going to start establishing the inner glow, something like that. I'm going to go all the way to white for the center of it. The wings are like I think they're just kind of gray, but they show their background. They're kind of like semi-transparent. So I could do them on their own layer and then just turn the transparency down. That might not be a terrible way to handle them, actually. And then I'll just make the fairy into a group. In fact, I'll just start by doing that. Fairy. Try to stay organized. I know the temptation to, when you're in the middle of workflow, to just keep going with stuff, but try to stay organized. Okay, I'm going to use the soft round pressure size brush. And looking at my ref, this doesn't need to be like I think probably the shapes of the fairies have changed like a little bit across games and stuff, but they're always, I mean, this is, no one's going to look at this and have a question what it is supposed to be. And I think as long as you get really close, then that's pretty much job done with this aspect of it. It's a very iconic and quite simple shape, right? So I would say it's probably a case of the limitations of the day actually inspiring really cool design. So I'm a firm believer that limitations actually inspire amazing levels of creativity. And one of the reasons why older games and tend to have maybe just that little bit more like kind of interest, and they're more fun. I think a lot of that is down to them working with the limitations. Once the limitations went away, we started getting hyper-realism and all this stuff, which is cool. It's cool. But it's pretty boring when you really think about it. It's not nearly as fun, interesting. I think that's one of the reasons why Nintendo is actually probably doing better right now in the gaming market than anyone else, because they've never lost that recognition that games should be a fun experience. I'm going to put this underneath. Games should be a fun experience that kind of take you into a different place in headspace, not kind of just a regurgitation of reality. Should be is not the right word. I'm using the wrong word there. Should is not the right word. I think it's a lot of people enjoy when games do that, provide that escapism. Woo, we're getting out of control here. I'm holding down Shift to lock my rotation to grid points so I can get more easily back to straight. And I'm going to turn the opacity on the fairy wings down now. So now no matter what we do in the background, we're going to have the transparent feel, the translucent feel to the... It's not transparent, it's translucent, which is see-through but with masked, masking what... It's not glass, basically. So we'll just call that fine for now. I'll adjust the transparency of them according to what feels right as we work on the background of this painting. Okay, so now let's worry about our color palette. I'm going to bring this up to local color, and I think I'm going to call this one done. We're already 45 minutes in. Hopefully I can get this to color in the next 15 minutes, and we'll just try to keep these episodes to about an hour, because that's pretty long. Hopefully you guys are following along and the format's not too long for you guys. But I know for myself, when I watch paintings, like, I really like to just enjoy the full process. I don't want any video magic. I don't want... I mean, sometimes it's nice to see a sped up process, but sometimes it's also nice to just see like every little thing that happens in a painting. There's no video editing, there's no sugarcoating anything. It's just the process, how it happens. So, okay, so what I've done here is I've created a layer over the top of my mask, and I held down Alt and hovered between the two layers, and that allowed me to lock that layer. So if I clicked now, it'll unlock it, and that relocks it. Okay, so it's time to start choosing colors. I'm going to start with the white undergarments because everything overlaps those. And that means that I don't have to be clean with the edges, because I'll be painting over those. So, you know, it's always good to be thinking about that kind of stuff. I'm also using I'm not using a brush with any texture or opacity or anything. It's the hard round brush. Also, you'll note that I'm at like a 30% gray here. And the reason for that is because I know that his undergarments are white technically, but in order to go somewhere with the rendering, I want to be a little bit off-white, because if you start with white, you can't go anywhere with your lights. You're already all the way there, which is an okay way to work, I suppose, if you have a tradition of watercolor and stuff, or colored pencil, which I did a lot of colored pencil growing up, where you have to leave your whites white. Otherwise, you're never going to get back to white unless you use like mineral spirit or something. If you have a tradition of working that way and it's natural to you to like have everything going darker from white, then obviously by all means go for it. But I find it's better for me personally if something is technically white as a local color, I usually still bring that value down a little bit to a slightly darker local color so that I have somewhere to go with the light. Okay, so now that we've got that down, let's go into his boots. And no, because that leather is going to be the pack, same as his pack. So no, let's go to his tunic. And the green of his tunic is a fairly yellow green, I think. So the nice thing about... Does that feel pretty good? That feels okay. The nice thing about Photoshop, as I've said a fair few times now, is that nothing is permanent. Things are infinitely changeable, right? So if you don't like the color of something, just keep going. And that's actually true. That's actually true with all painting to some degree, depending on, there are some darks in traditional that are pretty unforgiving depending on the medium you're using, but for the most part you can always keep going. So, but it just so happens that in Photoshop specifically, you can really embrace this feeling of being able to try your ideas, try your colors, try whatever you want. Nothing is out of reach as an idea, as an option. So like, just continue to explore, and also just don't be nervous to try things, I think is really what I'm trying to say here. Don't be nervous to try things. Don't feel like, oh, that color's wrong, and if you use it, then you're screwed after that, because you're not. You can change it. And this is true, I believe, for basically all the digital softwares at this point. It's not like a Photoshop only kind of a reality by any means. Let's make sure we cross that line there. I think that's all the green. Okay, moving on to his leather. Leather is a fairly pink brown. I think I might stay right around in here and just check how that feels. Yeah, it feels pretty good. painting right through the sword. That way I know that for a fact that there's no issues with the boot getting it the color it needs. His packs. And I made the decision to have his belt, his boots, all his leathers, like his gauntlets, be the same brown, because I think in the traditional game design, that's what they kind of did, which makes sense. I mean, when you think about it, they're dealing with the limitations of, like, they're trying to make this a playable character in a game, right? So, and especially back in the 90s and whatnot, you had to make decisions about what you were going to do, like what, as far as, so, if you did X, Y, or Z thing, each choice you make is going to impact the other choices that you get to make, because you have limited space in the development of the game. I think I just got into my color there a little bit. That's okay. This Vambrace arm here still feels too big to me, but that is okay. And I believe he just has fingerless gloves all the way up like that. Checking time. Okay, still got 8 minutes to do this within the hour. Okay, let's find a skin tone. I'm gonna just go slightly more orange, and I'm gonna come up here. His skin tone is quite light and peach. I'm gonna go for a little bit more realism in this eventually, but for now, I do think starting with the traditional game skin tone is a good idea. Okay, fingers. I think that's all of his skin. His hair is blonde, but it's like kind of a dirty blonde, depending on which game you look at. Ooh, I noticed a spot where I didn't get behind the sword properly there. So let's see, hair. We're gonna bring some orange into it. I'm gonna check right here. Note that I pretty much haven't crossed the middle plane of the color palettes, or the color picker, like over here. I haven't gone over here at all, and with any of these colors, because a bunch of saturation is usually going to look quite fake, and that can be fine for if that's the type of work you're trying to do. But as I've said, I do plan on taking this in a more realistic direction with the rendering, which means that establishing a more believable color palette is pretty essential right off the bat. Not that it looks believable in flat paint like it is right now, but it gets you in the right direction from the beginning. Okay, let's see here. The sword is reflective, which means that the environment is going to impact it. But as of right now, I haven't decided what the environment is going to be. That's going to be later. So I'm just going to go with like a basic kind of light. I'm actually going to create a new layer for it. Look there, see, I said I'm going to paint behind it just in case, and I still didn't actually get all the way behind it. Okay. Okay. This feels a little bit close to his undergarments right now, which is kind of a problem. What the hell? That was weird. I accidentally clicked on my Windows button. Okay. So that's why I did this on its own layer. Because I want to be able to change the color of that blade at will. And back to the layer below. Really quickly, clean up the boot. I'm not going to go too crazy with the cleanup on this stuff, because as you'll probably have guessed, I've said it a million times by now, each phase of this painting is, I work up from the last place, and nothing is ever like a big deal until it really actually matters. A lot of times just the natural path of painting a piece deals with issues in real time when you get to them. So like when I get to detail and shadow and light and stuff, I'm gonna have to paint these areas again. And so naturally over the course of the work, these things are gonna happen, right? So it doesn't make that much sense to get overly obsessed. Just to, you know, get it clean-ish. Okay, so the Master Sword has a dark blue handle, so we're gonna find something dark blue, staying in the grays. Well, not the grays, I mean, staying near the 50% mark as far as saturation is concerned. And this sorted out. Looks like I've got something going on in there. I think I need to go back to my gauntlet color. The handle, I think, actually has a slightly lighter, has a little pattern on it of some kind, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. Minutes. Okay. Right there. Okay, the jar needs a similar treatment to the fairy as far as its transparency is concerned. So I think I'll just create a layer above. Nah. I'll use an eraser, a soft eraser, to erase the transparency into it. I'm just gonna go with this color that I've been using for other lights. That'll be good enough for now. And I think I'll use this brown and go a little bit more yellow and a little bit more gray and light and hit this cork. That's an okay starting point for the cork. Okay. Gonna turn off my rough sketch. All right, I think we're gonna call this one. We got to color, and we got our sketch kind of sorted out a bit from what we started with as far as proportions. That doesn't mean we might not still continue to tweak it as we go, because that's how I work. But yeah, we're going to call this one. We're at an hour now, so if you enjoyed this video, give it a like. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to, don't want to miss the following videos in this series. And I will see you guys in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, share it with your friends, ring the bell for notifications of future videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.